Hey everybody, today's November 8th, and today we're going to look at the price of Bitcoin having a really beautiful breakout over the weekend, close to retaking the previous all-time high of 67,000 and close to seeing new all-time highs going forward, perhaps this week or even today, right, the end of today. Before we begin, please read the disclaimer and you can pause this video as you read it. Okay, so over the weekend we saw Bitcoin have a nice breakout from the lows of 60,000 all the way up to 66,000, and right now we're about to take out the previous all-time high, which is just below 67,000 that we set in the late October, very recently, right? And of course we took that all-time high, took out the previous all-time high this year in April, right? And as you can see, these levels are just above this resistance level. This purple line, this Fibonacci line, and we talked about in previous videos how these levels tend to act as strong support and resistance levels. And right now, we are trying to turn this resistance level that we hit over here and over here. We are trying to turn these levels into support. Just like when we come over here, we break through and we turn this into support, and we have a nice move higher. Same thing here, right? We had support over here earlier this year, but we broke the support in May due to the China ban of miners, right? But then we eventually came back up and turned this resistance support by basically consolidating, cultivating, basically absorbing the supply and cultivating more support from the bulls, right? And then finally pushing the price higher. And now that we've hit this Fibonacci resistance level, Bitcoin is again trying to turn this resistance into support by basically going sideways, absorbing the supply, and basically trying to push up and stay above this line. So in the short term, as long as Bitcoin can stay above this line, I am bullish on Bitcoin. I believe it will continue higher. Let's look at Bitcoin had a weekly close recently and a very strong green candle. It's actually the highest weekly close of all time. And of course, now we are falling through with even higher prices, which is really great. But look at this pattern, right? We talked about this in a previous video that this is a ascending triangle, right? We have increasingly higher lows, but we keep hitting the same highs, right? And eventually, technical analysis says that the more we hit a certain level, the more we are to break above or below, whether that is to the upside or to the downside, right? So right now we are just basically poking our head above this ascending triangle, and once we break through, I can see a huge parabolic run, kind of like when we saw over here, right? This ascending triangle breaking above in late of last year, late 2020, and again now ascending triangle breaking above, perhaps to 100,000 or above, right? In our previous video, I talked about how Bitcoin can hit 100,000 or even 200,000 or 300,000, but we'll talk more price targets later as we look at more charts and models. But for now, let's look at the daily chart and look at more of the technical analysis, right? Of course, we look at the MACD. The momentum has been moving down a little bit as Bitcoin has been consolidating, but now we're about to have a bullish cross, and I can see that pushing the momentum a lot higher as buyers have more confidence and conviction as they seeing the price move higher. RSI also about to move higher to 70 or above, which is a really great for, as you can see in, let me just out here, as Bitcoin rose from October to April last year, we saw RSI really very strong move, right, to late last year. And we want to see RSI at these elevated levels because that means that there's a lot of strong buying momentum coming in, right? We don't want to see RSI go down as the price goes up, right? Because that's usually a sign of distribution or the smart money selling. And so yeah, monthly is also looking very good. We had a very strong monthly close in October, and November, hopefully we are able to follow through with that and continue up higher. I talked about many times how in the past cycle in 2013, I believe that we are following a similar pattern where we have 6 monthly green candles followed by a mid-cycle correction and a final blow-off top going into the end of the year, right? Same thing that we're seeing starting from late last year. We had 6 consecutive green candles, mid-cycle correction, and of course, I think we're about to see a parabolic run to the end of the year. And we'll update you going forward to see where we might take potential exit signals or potential profits, right? Potential exits along the way up. But just to summarize, the technicals look very bullish right now. Of course, we went over the ascending triangle on the weekly chart and how that looks like it's about to break out parabolically. Is that a word? Parabolically, in a parabolic fashion, right? Just like we've seen in previous patterns, right? And yes, daily chart, everything is looking looking very good. And really just lastly, we went over the Fibonacci lines, but also the moving averages, right? The moving averages, we can see that the silver line is above the gold line, above the blue line. The silver line is your 50-day moving average, the gold line is your 100-day moving average, and the blue line is a 200-day moving average. And when those lines are stacked like that on top of each other, like it is now, and like we had late last year, right? This tends to foreshadow a big run for higher. So right now, the moving averages have been bullishly postured for a couple weeks now, and we can see the bulls really fighting to push the price of Bitcoin to all-time highs. But first, we need to defend this Fibonacci resistance level and turn it into, support level, turn and finalize this resistance, turning it into support. And this is very strong resistance, like I said, because of course we had this huge rejection here, which caused a 55% plunge in the price of Bitcoin, right? This is why we've been consolidating, going sideways for the last 2 weeks, right? I said that when Bitcoin broke this Fibonacci level, I could see the price of Bitcoin consolidating, going sideways for a couple of weeks. Or either that, or Bitcoin would go straight up to this next Fibonacci resistance level, which is $75,000 or $80,000, which is likely the last major resistance level before $100,000. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves and focus on short-term price targets up to $100,000, right? But for now, Bitcoin looking very strong right now. If we can hold and close the day above this Fibonacci resistance level, we can turn it into support, and I think that's going to give more confidence to the bulls to push the price higher above to the next resistance level, the 75,000 to 80,000, and of course the next after that the biggest resistance level that we're all looking for, the big psychological number, $100,000. And once we break $100,000, I think we're going to see massive FOMO, massive parabolic move to the upside, like we saw in 2013, right? We saw this huge ascending triangle pattern, breakout, huge gain over here, 2013. And right now we're seeing a very similar ascending triangle pattern here, about to break out. Who knows, 200, 300,000, who knows? Of course, the sky's the limit, but we definitely will need to wait for the price action to develop going forward. That might take a couple of weeks before we can get a more accurate description, but let's focus on the short term, right? Right now, Bitcoin's looking very bullish on the technicals, but let's look at the fundamentals. Look at the on-chain data. Hash rate recovering, but still not at the previous all-time high in April. Once we break April's high, I can see the price going forward, going parabolic, right? Because hash rate is very important. We want a lot of miners coming in and keeping the network secure and running, and that's going to give Bitcoin more intrinsic value and give more confidence to the bulls to buy Bitcoin, right? And for the miners to hold the Bitcoin instead of selling it. Fear and greed index, Bitcoin looking really good. Fear and greed index. Keep in mind that in our last bull run, the major bull run that we had in late 2020, as you can see on this chart, the fear and greed index was at elevated levels above 90 for a long time. So once we see the fear and greed level go up to 80 or 90, that's not necessarily a bad thing. You don't necessarily have to sell right away, even though this chart is telling us that we're technically overbought. The thing is, in a strong bull cycle, we can see the price of Bitcoin running for a long time. See, over here, right? Huge move towards the end of over here, October to April, and you can see the fear and the greed index, right? Just at a very elevated level for a long time. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. You don't necessarily have to be scared and sell immediately, but just keep it in mind that elevated levels generally are good in a bull market, but you want to definitely be on your toes if it stays a little too long, and that's generally a good time to start selling a little bit or taking some profits. So let's look at some of our models that we've been looking at for a while, right? Two-year multiplier tells us to sell when the price of Bitcoin is above this orange reddish line and it becomes shaded. That's generally a good opportunity to sell. And of course, to buy when it's below the green line and it becomes shaded. That's generally a good area to buy and to sell above here, right? Right now, we didn't even break this level earlier this year. We've just been going sideways, and as we continue to go sideways, the upper boundary continues to go up high. Right now, it's just below 130,000. When the price of Bitcoin rises going into the end of this year, if history serves us correct, we'll likely overshoot, right, and go to the upside. And so this should trigger a sell signal or a overbought signal way above 130,000. And this is just now, like we're still in the middle of this channel. By the time the price hits the upper boundary, this price could go up a lot higher, giving us a potentially higher exit signal, right? So this is very bullish. This chart is nowhere telling us that Bitcoin is overbought yet, and that there's still a lot of potential upside until the end of the year, right? Price cycle top indicator is really great for timing exits. Right now, it's like the two-year multiplier, right? It's still trending neutral in between the channels, in between the boundaries, right? And the price cycle top indicator generally tells us to sell when the orange line crosses above the green line. Usually when the price of Bitcoin breaks above the green line, it goes parabolic and forcing these lines to converge and to eventually cross, forming this dotted line, right? And of course we had a signal earlier this year in April, which perfectly timed this 55% drawdown. And so price cycle top indicator is going to be one of those indicators I'm definitely going to put weight into when I'm timing my exit later this year or early next year, depending on how the price action develops going forward. So price cycle top indicator right now looks very bullish, as long as it's above orange line, right? When the price cycle top indicator is below the orange line, that's usually in a bear market. So as long as we above the orange line, and of course breaking above the green line, can be very bullish. Pull multiplier tells us that the price of Bitcoin is overbought and to sell when you see this reddish maroon line spike above this shaded red area, right? And we haven't even touched this area in the entire year. So this looks very much like a mid-cycle correction, very close to 2013, right? We had a big 50% plus drawdown before another parabolic final blowout top. So when we see this spiking into this area, that's going to be another potential exit signal, telling us that the price of Bitcoin is overbought, right? Golden ratio multiplier tells us to sell when the price hits this dotted line. But if you pay attention, you'll see that the peak has been going down every time, right? This one, we had 3 dotted lines, 3 dotted lines. This one was 2 dotted lines, and this one hit just 1 dotted line. So it's possible that the price of Bitcoin this time won't even hit a dotted line. It'll hit the purple line. And right now the purple line is 130,000, and right now we're dropping below this green level, which is one of the lower boundaries. So as the price of Bitcoin continues to recover, this upper boundary will continue to go up higher, giving us a potentially higher exit signal. So again, another model that's telling us that Bitcoin is nowhere near overbought, right? There's still a lot of potential upside to come. Logarithmic growth curve, right? Logarithmic growth curve tells us that Bitcoin tends to peak on this upper boundary of this channel, right? Like over here, here, and over here. And of course, we have the variance chart over here telling us how much this is deviating from the model. And right now we are just above here. And look how similar this looks to 2013, right? When we broke above the 0.5 deviation, this thing exploded higher, or variance exploded higher, right? So I can see us going higher into the end of the year. And this model predicting around 140, 150,000 towards the end of the year. So again, there's different there's variation between the final tops across different models, but the general consensus is that the price of Bitcoin will likely continue higher, right? We just don't know where the top is going to be yet. So Z-score, again, telling us that Bitcoin will be overbought and to take some profits when you see this maroon red line break above the shaded area, right? And of course, we've seen that happen in the peaks of the previous market cycles, but we haven't seen that happen yet here. So still a lot of upside to go, right? It's looking like a mid-cycle correction like we saw in 2013 before the final push higher, right? So still a lot of upside. Lastly, we'll look at the Stockton Flow model. Stockton Flow model, which everybody loves to talk about, but one of the more popular models, tells us that the price of Bitcoin should be around where this reddish maroon line is, right? So right now we are under this line, and so this variance model telling how much we're deviating from this model is still in this green area, which is still a very it's telling us that the price of Bitcoin, according to this model, is undervalued. So this could be a good opportunity to accumulate and buy some more before it tells us that the price of Bitcoin is going above and perhaps overbought. But still, Bitcoin has a history of not only breaking above this red line, but overshooting it, right? And then, of course, in a bear market, it overshoots to the downside and eventually stabilizes in between, basically on the line, right? On average, it stabilizes. So we should, if we do follow this model, we should see something like an overshoot up to maybe 200,000 or 300,000 by the end of this year, or maybe early next year. Who knows? In the bear market, we will likely see Bitcoin go below, according to his model, go below 80,000, right? Not for a short period of time, and it stabilize around 80,000 to 100,000 over the next 3 to 4 years. But that's looking very couple of years ahead. So we want to focus on the next couple months, potentially to the end of this bull cycle. Yeah, if we do follow the past, this chart, this model is telling us that Bitcoin will likely peak somewhere around 200, 300,000. But yeah, so we'll definitely need to wait a little bit more to see. To give more accurate price prediction going into the end of the year. But overall, all these models are very bullish, right? Telling us that Bitcoin is nowhere near overbought. There's still a lot of upside, right? Fear and greed index, hash rate is recovering. Everything is looking really good. The price of Bitcoin is still defending $66,000 despite a huge move on this week over the weekend, right? So just to summarize, Bitcoin is having this beautiful ascending triangle right now, and it's trying to break above this ascending triangle, right? It's trying to break its above, and once it does, I think we can go parabolic, right? Just like we had this ascending triangle last year, and then we had a huge rally in the leading in late last year into April this year, and of course, we can't end this video without talking about 2013, right? Very similar, huge push up, mid-cycle correction, and another, end of the year rally. Are we going to see something similar this year, right? Are we going to see something similar? Push up, mid-cycle correction, end of the year rally. Are we going to see something similar? If we do, we can see spectacular gains into perhaps $200,000 or $300,000 level, right? People are talking about $100,000, but honestly, once we break $100,000, because that's such a strong psychological level, I can see Bitcoin just doubling, tripling within, just a couple weeks. Bitcoin it has a history of just going parabolic towards into the end of the year. So I think people, they kind of been lulled into this kind of false sense that Bitcoin is going to go side. It moves very slowly, but Bitcoin can move very fast, a lot faster than people think. Right? This is cryptocurrency. This is one of the most volatile asset classes. Right? Bitcoin can move very, very fast, and I think that could shock a lot of people. But for now, let's focus on just the trying to break the previous all-time high of 67,000. Of course, if Bitcoin is able to break above the ascending triangle, like I just said, I do think that our next resistance level is going to be around $75,000 to $80,000. And once we break that, $100,000 for sure. And once we break that, of course, will be parabolic. And I'll definitely be here to update you as on the price action going forward. Just a lot of exciting times. Very bullish. The fundamentals have never been better. More places, institutions are adopting Bitcoin, and everything's just looking really good. Just really exciting times ahead, and we'll definitely update you on the price action going forward. Hopefully in our next video, the price of Bitcoin will have broken above the ascending triangle that we just talked about, right? And who knows where that could be. We want to see Bitcoin in the next video hopefully move up to our next resistance level around $75,000 to $80,000, and from there we'll navigate and we'll basically analyze this chart, this market going forward into $100,000, and that can be really, really exciting times. So until then, thank you for watching this video. If you found it useful, helpful, informative, please like this video, leave a comment below, and subscribe for updates. I appreciate all your support. Thank you again, and have a great day.